So, is the film like a turd in the wind? Nah, in many ways it's just a middle-of-the-road movie, so it's not other crap. Part of the reason I feel this way is probably whenever I go see a film, I go with lowered expectations. This film is a very loose adaptation of The Lethal Protector and Planet of the Symbiotes storyline. And by that I mean only in the most vague way. One of the issues many people have with this film is the fact that this is a Spider-Man character, but Spider-Man doesn't exist in this world, even though J. Jonah Jameson apparently does, because if you listen closely about the surviving astronaut's name is Jameson, as in John Jameson, as in J. Jonah Jameson's son, and possibly future Man-Wolf. Does Sony have the rights to Man-Wolf? Anyway, this eliminates both Eddie's and the symbiote's core motivation. I decided not to hark on that because I decided to think instead of this film as an alternate universe and then just accept the film on its own terms. How did that work out? Well, the story goes like this. Script reporter Eddie Brock runs afoul Carlton Drake and the Life Foundation, and in the process loses his fiancée, job, and health. Through shenanigans, the symbiote named Venom invades his person, and both try to stop Carlton Drake / Riot from starting a mass invasion of the planet Earth. Wackiness ensues. And here are some pros and cons. First, the pros. Well, it was shot professionally. It's a $100 million film, so it should be. I didn't feel the length of the film. The film runs at a good pace. I was never bored. And at 1 hour 52 minutes, it was actually 4 minutes shorter than Doctor Strange. Okay, that's no good. Let me try again. 1. It's a take on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. For the most part, it works, except when you realize that Hyde was the worst traits of Dr. Jekyll in physical form, and it's not that way with the Eddie Venom partnership. 2. The interaction of Eddie and Venom. While Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock wasn't that very interesting, he does seem to be having fun as both Eddie Brock and Venom, which he also voices, apparently. Number 3, spoiler, but I really don't care. It's the best part of the film, and it's the after credits scene. Thing is, it hasn't anything to do with the film. It's a scene from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I wouldn't go to see Venom just to see that scene, since I'm sure Sony will release that scene online within the next few weeks, but it's an incredibly enjoyable look at possibly one of the best animated Hollywood films to come out this year, even though that's really not saying much. Now the cons. 1. The CGI was wonky at times. The most obvious example is with the symbiotes. At times they come off as pre-rendered sludge that don't have any weight in our world. Also, during the fight scenes, since both symbiotes are dark and they're fighting in the dark, it was really tough to see what were they doing. 2. None of the acting is really good. An example would be Michelle Williams. She's pointless in the film. She does her best, but the writing's not good either, but she doesn't come off that well. No one really comes off that well. Not even the villain. He just comes off as a typical cardboard villain who's evil because of stuff. And as far as Michelle Williams go, she only has 2 memorable moments. One would be her pushing a button, and the other would be a strangely erotic kiss. 3. There are times that the film looks like it wants to be an R-rated film and a horror film, but it really can't. Parts of the film keep changing, going from goofy, unfunny comedy to not always interesting action to what is supposed to be brutal action and again to dark comedy. Because of this, there's an inconsistency of tone. 4. Piggybacking on what I just said earlier, misplaced comedy and scenes that are funny that I feel the original intention was supposed to be serious. There are times when I chuckled and laughed during non-comedic scenes. The best example would be the mid-credits scene. 5. A waste of a Stan Lee cameo. Also, why couldn't they have a cameo of the actual creators of Venom, Todd McFarlane and David Michelinie? Also, in previous MCU and DCEU films, at the end of the film, they always gave credit to every prominent creator that worked on the character. Sony didn't do that. That's very disappointing. Now here are some thoughts that were going through my mind as I watched the film. What's Venom's motivation? Why does he want to be on Earth? He gives a lame reason in the third act, but it takes until the third act in order for him to state his motivation. Heck, what is Eddie Brock's motivation? His character is a little all over the place in the film. Why is Venom called Venom and Riot Riot? These are human names. I mean, I know why in the comic they're called what they're called, but the movie never does. Here's a reason Eddie gives for why he's called Venom in Amazing Spider-Man number 300. Peter Parker. Who are you? Eddie. You may call me Venom, for that's what I'm paid to spew out these days. I'm your victim, Spider-Man. I'm the innocent you ruined. Straight to the point, and you understand. And he even gives his backstory. But you really didn't need the backstory once he said that. You got an idea leading up to that moment. 3. If the symbiote and human have a parasitic relationship, and if, as shown earlier in the film, when the symbiote leaves its host, the host die, why didn't that happen to Eddie? The symbiote left several times during the film from Eddie and he just stayed alive. Who seriously thought to give Woody Harrelson that silly bootleg Ronald McDonald reject wig? If, as the film says, one of the weaknesses of the symbiote is fire and fire kills one of the symbiotes in the climax, then why isn't Venom and by extension Eddie dead at the end? They took a full blast of fire and nope, they just go on and utter the turd in the wind line. So do I recommend this? Sure, but only if you know what you're getting yourself into. If you saw the trailers and you like what you saw, you'll enjoy this. If you didn't like the trailers, then you'll probably won't like this film. The acting, story, characters, action, and writing all weren't really good, but while watching the film, you are a bit invested because of the nonsensical things that happen on the screen. As long as you don't think too hard about the film as you're watching it, it can be enjoyable. The problem comes after you've seen the film and then start thinking about it. A lot of it won't make sense. You'll start poking holes into the plot and motivations of the characters, including the villain. I imagine the reason why this is doing well at the box office, at least in the opening weekend, is groups of friends and other people are wanting to see this film as a group activity. This isn't the first time a film was made based off of a supporting comic book character and the main character that actually strengthens said character is missing. Anybody remember Catwoman and Steel? The difference between these three films is that Steel and Catwoman are DC comic characters and Warner Brothers owns DC and has for decades and really hasn't done anything to exploit their IPs, at least movie-wise. They usually have some other company produce the film and they'll just distribute. Because of this, there was a degree of lack of quiet control to their films, even now to a degree. Now, Sony owns the film rights to Spider-Man and perhaps part of the overall character allegedly, and it's their most bankable property, so it's understandable that they would want to exploit it as much as they can. The problem is they've been too eager to want to expand the universe. They want to do too much too fast, and that's affected the quality of their films and the Spider-Man property overall. This all started with when Amy Pascal was head of the studio and has continued on with Tom Rothman. I do wonder why Sony hired him after what happened with Fox under his watch though. Anyway, the property keeps getting passed around and rejiggered, but it's not given to anyone who seems to either understand it or have any great love for the property. I believe the reason why that Venom was made now instead of about 10 to 15 years ago when the character was more popular is because of Spider-Man Homecoming's success. Because of the recent failure of their films and the Sony leak of a few years ago, Sony crawled to Marvel Studios and asked them to help them with their next Spider-Man film. They weren't going to give back the rights or anything like that. They're not that stupid. Close, but not. Their partnership with Marvel Studios worked out. Now, riding on that goodwill, Sony probably feels good about themselves and thinks that they can go it alone on the non-Spider-Man films and it'll work out. And based on early projections, they have been proven correct. However, this film may be just an exception and not the rule. When a sequel of this film comes out, and it will come out, or if they still want to go through with those other films that they're talking about making, like Kraven the Hunter, Morbius the Living Vampire, and Silver and Black, if those are as big and as disjointed mess like Venom is, then every one of them will fail, because at least with Venom, he's a character fans know of, and the casual moviegoer at least has vague memories of, unlike the other characters I just noted. If you want to see a better version of this film, just watch one that came out earlier this year called Upgrade. It's essentially the same story. It has, however, great action, acting, and consistent special effects, and a gut punch of an ending. I'm more interested in a sequel of that film than of Venom. I understand what Sony is doing though. They feel since they have the Spider-Man rights and thus access to at least 900 characters, that there's a wealth of opportunity to make their own movie universe. The problem with that, however, is in order to have any kind of meaning to the characters, they have to be linked to Peter Parker, Spider-Man. It looks, however, that Venom will be Venom will be a success because of 1, the curiosity factor, 2, people going to hate watch, which I don't understand, it doesn't make any sense, and 3, fans of the character and Spider-Man perhaps hoping that Peter pops up in the film. He doesn't. Oh well, people, the internet complained about the Emoji Movie last year, and that made a profit. And it looks like the same thing is happening with Venom. So I guess Venom is doing something right. Right?